is a show where the spirit has control. Straight up, no chaser. So listen up close, get the medicine for your soul. Straight up, no chaser. Telling you the truth is what we here to do. Straight up, no chaser. Come get all the blessings God got for you.
These type of conversations we're having here, why can't or why don't white people or any people of different races want to sit down at the table now and talk? Because that's the issue to me. Everybody still got the wall up and they're still standoffish. Like, no, I'm good. I don't need to talk. I don't need to discuss it. In actuality, that's something missing. The conversation piece is missing.
Sure. I mean, I can speak on the white side in terms of that, you know, we haven't been groomed to think about this. And so I think, you know, that fear becomes tremendous. I'm afraid I'm going to mess up.
Yeah, it's funny you said we haven't been groomed.
Whatever way that superiority stuff, I always expect to be right. I always expect to know. And this is a topic that I'm so out of my realm. I'm so out of my experience. Even though I have a racial identity, just as you do, I don't get invited to think about it very much, right? So that then I'm not prepared. Go ahead. Yeah, I'm good.
Oh no, that's what I was saying. It's not as pronounced. The average white person don't know they're white because they don't have to think about being white.
Right.
Right. Whereas the average black person absolutely has to think about being black.
You know, what's sad though, my kids, well, they're not kids now. I got young men and women that I've raised, but they are. I remember when they were kids, and you're right. I had to put in their mind, when you go in the store, you keep your hands out of your pockets. You stay with me. Don't walk through the store. That's the same stuff my mom told me. So that's same stuff she got from her mother.
Right.
When you go in the store, you keep your hands out of your pockets. Don't touch nothing, of course. But the key was, don't look like you're doing nothing. I'm like, what do I look? And I didn't understand it until I got older. You look like you're doing something. And you're not. And so that mentality, though, it's ingrained in us when we're little. And now that we're in this age now where people are doing different things, schools are somewhat more lenient. The generations, I tell my daughter, she's a Rainbow Coalition. All her friends are Japanese, white, black, Latino, and Asian. I said, you're the Rainbow Coalition. But you see more of that going on in the younger people. But then we have this younger group that's also still been raised on the fringe. That to me is concerning because it seems like we keep repeating the process.
Well, you know what happens, especially with younger people. The same thing happened with us when we were younger. When I was young, I hung around everybody.
Yeah, me too.
In a very diverse community with Vietnamese, Hispanics, blacks, whites, all of that together. And we all hung out together, skateboarded, everything, all this type of stuff together. But what winds up happening is you get older, and those same systems I was talking about begin to play a direct part within your own life. So now, because you have to make decisions to survive, you have to make decisions to be successful, decisions to live, praise God, those systems begin to draw those lines for you. And those same things that was easy when you didn't have responsibility are not so easy when you do. And that's the simplicity of it.
For sure.
Now, do you listen to
it takes a lot of work. I mean, you know, because those systems are so powerful.
Yeah.
And we just get swept up in the tide. So to be purposeful about, you know, maintaining the Rainbow Coalition or remaining, you know, intimate friends over 10, 20 years, like you say, when other priorities come, that's no joke. It takes a lot of concerted effort.
Racism is not about trying to prove that you're not racist.
Yeah, for real.
Racism is about being available to deal with the conditioning.
That's right.
And where people fall in their availability. The mistake that most people make out of a qualification-based thinking is that because I don't want to sin, or I don't even want to be perceived as a person that sins, I want to hurry up and determine that I'm not racist.
Right.
Right? You know, like a real funny thing that most people don't recognize is that people who are in mixed marriages, people who adopt black kids, people who grow up in black neighborhoods or communities are the first ones that will determine that they're not racist. But the truth of the matter is they're more racist than most. You know what I'm saying? Like, real talk. And that's the interesting thing about it. Again, racism has nothing to do with hate. We're talking about a conditioning of superiority. You follow me? And that's what we see. That's the very thing that you wind up experiencing. And so when you start talking about dealing with racism, it's really about the availability, you know, and then even then that availability has to be motivated or centered on a pursuit for God, and versus not me trying to not deal with guilt. That makes sense. I mean, I can break it out a little bit more, but that's big.
Yeah.
Well, you know, I was thinking about the stories that you told, you know, each of you, you know, and growing up. And I feel like because I've been doing this work, my kids, I have 2 white sons, 28 and 26, and who, you know, had a mixed race group of friends. And I would tell my kids, yo, if you're hanging with William, you can't be climbing a fence. Your white privilege doesn't protect William. So you can't be doing that kind of stuff if he's with you. Or if he's in a store, walk next to him. Just don't leave his side, right? And those are things that us white people don't think about. You know, we think, you know, boys will be boys, and so be wild however you want. You're having a good time. And I would be to my kids like, no, there's different costs to your friends.
That's deep.
You can't.
That's deep. That's powerful.
You can't.
I've never heard. I'll be honest with you, Chris. I've never heard a white man have that conversation with his sons or daughters. But that was a deep conversation.
Right.
That sounds, man. You done knocked my socks off. Because you had concern. You intentionally done that.
That's right. That's wise. Yeah.
Yeah. That's good.
Are you familiar with Robin DiAngelo?
Sure.
Oh, no doubt. Yeah.
Sure. I mean, I think that, you know, I would say that one of the things that I think over time has made me good at what I do is that I do think about our white fragility, my own white fragility. What are the ways in which I'm still afraid I'm messing up, or that I am messing up? And what stories do I tell myself about myself if I do it? Right. And so, you know, incorporating some kind of compassion about the things that will get stirred in us as white people, I feel like has been a really important ingredient, because white people whose fragility isn't attended to, you all know, end up being, you know, kind of aggressive in, you know, in small and big ways, right?
Or even being passively aggressive.
Yes, exactly. For real.
You have all kind of layers in this. You have the white hero, you know what I mean, like straight up, that goes out to feed people to pacify levels of guilt and shame that he's really not confronting within himself. You know, that does missions and all these type of things, you know, but all of it is pacification. None of it is really confronting or challenging yourself with the struggle.
Right, for real.
So are you saying that they attempt to you know, put a Band-Aid on a situation?
But not even just the Band-Aid on a situation, but they're not confronting their whiteness. They're not confronting these attitudes and ideas of superiority. They're actually exercising them now with trying to pacify in some shape, form, or fashion. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think you're right on about that. And so, like, you know, helping, you know, schools, nonprofits, community organizations, you know, churches, healthcare. I mean, they're so full of white people who we think that the redress of those bad systems is to put on our cape and be saving you. Y'all don't need to be saved, right? We all need to be saved.
Right. We all need to be saved, no doubt.
Right. You know, and so, yeah, I mean, I agree with you. And then it's very difficult for a person of color to not accept the help.
That's right. Because you need it.
Well, one, you need it.
Right.
It's part of it.
You know what?
But also, maybe it's not coming in the form that would actually be best for you.
That's
and
right.
Yet, because you people are supposed to be grateful, right? And I expect you to be. And if you get mad at me, I'm like, really? You're going to blow up my stuff? I'm here helping you all. Like,
That's right.
right?
That's
So,
That's
that
real
was,
stuff. You own it.
yeah. I had he was the founder of a college. He stood in a room and told us he had a printing service. The printing service got burnt down in the 60s because he hired nothing but African Americans or people of color to work in his shop. And he said, I was helping you people and y'all turned on me. And I was like, wow, that's deep. And we didn't slam him for it because it was like, I can't believe he sat and said that. But you just explained why he said it. I wish he was still with us now. I go tell him now I get you. I get you, Doc, because I didn't understand you the first time, Doc. I didn't understand you at all.
There's let me put it this way. Again, not forcing my ideology on anybody, but just this all I have. You know what I'm saying? I'm a preacher. You know what I'm saying? So the God foundational piece. This one thing I found. In dealing with racism within an individual, you have three different motivations. You have one, the God motivation. Like really, my own intimacy with God, my relationship with God brought me to a place where I realized this doesn't please God. A lot of times with most people, when they come to that place, then they begin to chase information, right? So historical information, just dealing with the traumas that Black people have lived through and the condition that Black people have lived through. It's a lot. Like, it's a lot, like real talk. And we see these ramifications lived out every single day. And we judge them as one thing, but in all actuality, this is a response. You know what I'm saying? Like real talk, you see people reacting and responding to a certain degree of trauma that is generation, and there's never been any therapy. Nobody's ever sit down and say, that's powerful all by itself. And then, the second motivation is guilt. The problem with guilt is it doesn't last. You know what I'm saying? So people can be in guilt for a short amount of time or a long amount of time, but most of the time when they die, that attitude of guilt it doesn't transcend them. It doesn't move on into the next generation naturally or organically. And that's a problem. And I can talk about each one of these a long time, but I'm just saying, that they're full. The third thing is relevance. So when you start talking about ministry and church and different things, the reality of it is the dynamics of America is changing drastically. They're believing within the next 20 to 30 years that the numbers are going to shift in major ways. So where those who were minority would no longer be the minority, they're become the majority. Right? And so you have churches trying to stay relevant, businesses trying to stay relevant, and everybody's trying to be, on the next thing. So this is why you have a lot of people dealing with diversity and inclusion within the corporate reality. You feel me? Again, it's all about relevance. It's not really about coming to a true place in myself. It's like, this isn't healthy. I'm working on another book called America Needs Counseling. We don't really see the broken aspect of this nation. We're literally broken. Like it's the way that we think, how we've been conditioned and programmed to think. You have most people don't even realize that the guilt and the shame, that they have within themselves that they're afraid to deal with. Like they will not deal with. It's not supposed to be a part of your truth. You know what I'm saying? And it's breaking us, like real talk. I mean, these things are heavy to deal with, but we're gonna have to eventually deal with them. We're going to have to deal with it. And I think the best motivation is the God motivation, where a person can really come through something that brings them to a different understanding, that brings them to a different truth, that doesn't just exist with their life, but then it passes them and passes on after them. And then they can affect the next generation even more positively, especially if they got a late start in the game, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I think, the guilt and shame stuff is real for white people. I mean, I think that many of us survived by not really paying attention to how bad and how really abhorrent conditions are of racism. And then once we see some of that, we feel guilty and we feel ashamed. And like you're saying, it's not sustainable, right? Being in contact with oneself and other people around shame and guilt is not life enhancing. It's not relationship enhancing.
That's right.
It's not spirit enhancing. And so actually, and what else happens too is that when us white people have our shame and guilt, we can then take our privilege to never have to talk about it or
That's
be in contact about it, right?
Mhm.
So we take care of our guilt or shame by just peace out,
Shutting up.
right?
Yeah.
it's real though.
Now,
Right.
Chris, now when you go into these businesses and they're trying to create an environment for multicultural environment, or an environment where we don't look at persons for promotions based on color alone, how do you change the mindset of the HR department, the CEO, the president? Because I've been fortunate. I've had the opportunity to sit on the other side and see and listen. They gave me a little glimpse of what was said behind the veil, but they didn't let it all come out, because I would leave a meeting and come back to the next meeting like, we didn't say that last time, but I only wrote out this. You get back, they got a whole list of things. I'm like, we never mentioned none of that, but you can go back and mark them and be like, that's all stuff they say Black people do. That's all stuff people of color do. How do you get these people to change their mindset on this?
It's really hard. It takes a really long time.
Uh-huh.
I mean, again, it's kind of like another reason why, like I had said, that I insist that the leadership, especially the male leadership, participate. Same thing, my clients, if you're not willing to work with me for 3 years, at least, I'm not your guy.
You work for 3 years?
Yeah, I say it, yeah, I would, I mean, obviously, if it doesn't work out, we fire each other, so to say.
Yeah.
And yet the expectation, laying out the expectation that I think minimally it's going to be 3, probably 5 years before all of those kind of nuanced, outside of our awareness biases that somehow, we keep sending these job descriptions out. And we keep only finding qualified white people.
Come on.
Right? Like, there's got to be different inputs into that decision making, which takes time, because us white people don't really, and I know that this is hard. I feel like this is one of the really hard things for me, to be somebody who spends a lot of time in people of color space and then white space, that people of color say there's no way you white people don't know what you're doing explicitly. Like, there's no way. This stuff is so in the face, it's so over the top. There's no way you people don't know that you're doing this, right? And then I'm with white people who, like, they're going to say, I didn't hire that person because they were white. They were just the most qualified.
That's right.
Right? And so, like, just even getting us to, like, get some traction with, well, maybe there is something racially connected to this. Take some work. Take some
3
work.
years. How many people you had back out on you like, nah, 3 years, I can't have you really retraining? Because I found people do that type of process, bring you in for training, diversity training for a show.
Yeah, for real. Well, it's the relevance. It's kind of
one weekend, 2 days, 2 days a week, and then, we're gone, we're better now. They've been in for 2 days.
That's right.
Then I'm like, what?
Yeah.
My first day with Chrysler, I got shipped to Georgia. My first day here, I sat through a diversity training. She was there one night, and we were better. I was like, wow, that's deep. And that's so to get people to buy in for 3 years, I don't know how you do that.
And then the other piece of it, I'm sure that you kind of wrestle with, is that in the thinking of your African Americans in the setting, that their thinking is just as broke.
Yeah.
Well,
When I tell you, mine in that meeting was broke, because I'm like, this is never gonna work. This is never gonna work.
Well, I mean, I feel you on that, right? And so I always work with a co-facilitator of color. And the main work that we do monthly is in Affinity. So I run groups for white people to figure this stuff out, and they run groups for people of color.
That's dope.
And to your point, right, there are costs to people of color and what they do to themselves and what they do to each other, and learning to do not automatic survival behaviors is skill building.
That's right.
Right on the other side. And so, saying, yes, how I'm responding now is because it's been like this for hundreds and hundreds of years. And do I need to do this in this moment with Chris in this conversation? Right? Can I give up my survival skills in that moment?
But you have to, because we were not made from God to survive.
For real.
That's the whole thing. Like, it's broken from from the gate. So we have to correct it, right? If you're going to live holistically and live a fully manifested life in this existence, you have to correct this. It's not about a black and white. It's about living your truth.
Really?
Yeah, that is, again, going back to you said a word, and you both have said the word intentional.
Yeah.
That's an intentional decision. I intentionally decided I'm no longer going to look at people this way. Or we did a course where, so I've been in 2 or 3 of these classes, and we were sent to, you had to go find someone that didn't look like you, and you had to go get to know them. That, and it was forced. So that was one of the oddest moments. And I was like, we sat there. I think we had like a 15-minute window to do this little exercise, and that was, I think we asked 3 or 4 questions, and that was a wrap. We sat there and looked at each other like, I don't know how much longer we got. We kept asking it 2 or 3 minutes later, how much longer we got? I don't know. So that was an odd conversation, but that was forced. But so it wasn't intentional. So that program was not beneficial at that time in my life, because I was raised, and I think I told you, I grew up in predominantly an area. It was diverse when I went to, well, diverse when I got older, but I grew up in an area where we had, what was it? My dad, everything we did had to be African-American minded, everything. Because my dad was, his religion, he was Muslim. So every book report I've ever done has been on African-American. Every school, my sister attended. As she got older, she never went to a multiracial school until, I don't know, because she went to all black. She went to HBCU. So I don't think she still hasn't gone to a one when she had to sit in a class.
Right.
And so we went on a trip together. She and I. She grabbed my hand like a little kid would. Like, I've never been around this many white people, because all the events we went to were black events.
Wow.
And those people, that's another mindset that when we walk into a room and we got, as I said, a white guy telling us we're going to get to know each other. It's like a wall's already there. Like, dude, no, you don't know me.
Yeah, right.
You don't know me. So that mindset that we walk into the room with is like, nah, this is going to be useless. How do you break down those walls, Chris? And then I get to you, Pastor.
I mean, I'm going to sound like a broken record. It's time and intentionality, right? You can't just leave things to chance. You know, chance will have it be that superiority that's baked in is going to come out, whether you like it or not.
So, baked in.
Yeah, so
that's real stuff.
So you know, being intentional about it is a really important thing, and keeping it relevant. I mean, I feel like that's part of the problem, is that it gets these things happen and it gets white people's attention, and they put Black Lives Matter on their Facebook, or you know, they go to a couple marches, and then a month later, 3 months later, the relevance and the intentionality, you know,
they walk away and it's
evaporates.
Yeah.
Good stuff. I think something else, from my perspective, one of the things that become powerful, we have to change the reward. We have to change the reward. What we've done in this qualification-based Christianity, we think, the vast majority of believers thinks unity is an end result. You know, we think if we can get past this racism and we have this place of unity, we've did it. You know, it's the end result, but it's not an end result. It's actually where the real work starts. But when the diversity can be appreciated, valued, so that who Sebastian Holley is valued, who my brother is valued. So the wealth that they have in them as an individual or a person can actually be brought to the table that we can utilize to accomplish the task. So the reward then becomes the wealth of real relationship. See, changing the reward is really key. So the value is not in us just trying to accomplish some idea of a relationship or some photo op. You know what I'm saying? The real value is the authenticity that we build relationship in, so we can trust each other well enough to be ourselves and be ourselves holistically, right? Then it brings value to our engagement.
So we shouldn't end up with that saying, I got a white friend, see? I got a white friend to take that picture. Or I got a black friend. I got a black friend take that picture. I've been in meetings. I went in groups that said that. You look at them like, For real? Did you just really say that? There's a show I'm thinking about called Blackish. Mm-hmm. It's a funny comedic show, but if you ever really look at the content,
of course,
it touches on issues that we're talking about right now. Mm-hmm. But he makes it comical. But if people really listen to what they're saying and really get an idea, he's breaking it down in a comedic fashion to how, and he breaks down some of the white I guess myths and some of the black myths, and he goes through them all. And you, by the end, you're just laughing. But it's like if you really go back and listen to what they say, wow, he's dealing with issues that you thought we would keep covered, because there's some issues we in the black community won't talk about because we were taught not to talk about them.
That's right.
We were trained not to discuss those issues. Mm-hmm. One being, you are to never ever, well, back then, raise our voice at a white guy. Mm-hmm. You got to stay out of their face, stay out of their neighborhood, and I never could figure that out. I never could figure that out because,
I grew up in a different area. I was never taught that.
Well, see, I grew up in Rome.
Right.
Back
That's
then.
Definitely a Georgia thing.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if I've ever told you guys this story, but in high school, when interracial dating kicked off, mm-hmm. we got called, the football team, we got called into a meeting. I was maybe on the JV team. We got called into a meeting, and coach went around this roundabout way of talking about making good decisions and making decisions about how we acted outside of football and how we carried ourselves. And you left out of the meeting like lost, totally lost. Like, what was coach talking about? And I thought he was talking about selling drugs and stuff, because that was the biggest thing in my house. In my house, you better not get caught selling drugs. So, and I'm like, but you ain't got to worry about us. 90% of our team, we were too scared to even think about hanging on the corner. So it was like, we're good. But then they said, no, that's not what he's talking about. At the time, we had our first interracial couple going to the prom. Oh. And it had been announced. And we all knew they dated, so we didn't care. Like, oh, okay, cool. They come to the prom.
It was announced that they were coming to the prom.
Yes, the teachers made sure every teacher knew, the principal knew, and maybe 2 weeks before the prom kicked off, we were all under lockdown. Guess why we were all under lockdown?
Wow.
The KKK showed up on the parking lot. The schools, I got a podcast. Me and this dude, we got to talk to you guys. Me and this dude, we tell you, we looked out the window and they were walking through the parking lot, putting on flyers.
The KKK.
Damn.
Yes, wanted people to join. And we were like, I thought I told you guys this story.
Wow.
Yeah, this is a true story. We got locked down. We normally got like 3:30, 3:15. We stayed to school probably like 3:45. The cops showed up. By the time the cops showed up, they had gone out the other side. So they walked the entire parking lot from the junior high and high school. They were both side by side. They walked all the way around there, handing out putting their flyers on cars.
Dude, so, you just 49.50.
That's exactly what I was thinking. I'm like, this is this generation.
That's right, exactly.
This is this generation.
Yes, this happened in 1985. I was a freshman in high school. I was a freshman in high school, and then they didn't shut down our prom, but we were told to make sure you made a wise decision about going to the prom. But at this time, the parents had to get involved, of the other couple. They have to say everything was fine. And we knew both sets of parents. They already knew they'd been dating for a whole year and a half. So what's the big issue? But yeah, it was crazy. It was crazy. If you want to listen to us tell the story, me and the guy, his name is Kwesi Jackson. Go back and listen to the podcast. We tell the story. And Kwesi's writing a book about it, as a matter of fact. The issues that we went through in Rome, Georgia.
And then you have people that will have the audacity to say that racism doesn't exist.
I know.
Oh.
He's talking about less than a generation ago. I mean, like, real talk.
Yeah. We were at West Rome High School. They locked us in. We went home 30 minutes late because they showed up on our campus.
Wow. I grew up primarily in Hot Springs, Arkansas.
Okay.
And I had a real live family. Like, my granddad was the truth. I mean, just like real talk, he didn't play the radio, like, in no shape, form, or fact. He was cool with his kids, but outside of that, all bets was off. He got the real, like, real talk. I come around conscious people. Like, when I got saved, 20 years ago, I had no image of a white Jesus. I had no image of a Eurocentric Christianity. You know, I didn't have that. You know what I'm saying? Because I knew that, you know, the Bible wasn't written in some abstract idea of Middle East. There was no Middle East when the Bible was written. You know what I'm saying? There was Northern Africa. You know what I'm saying? All these people look alike. You know what I'm saying? So I didn't have that. And so when I would meet people and talk to people that just could not wrap their mind around that Jesus wasn't white, you know, that was just mind blowing to me. So I grew up in a very different, very different reality. You follow me? And so there was never anything put in for me that was like, well, you need white people, you need to assimilate, you have to act like this, talk like this. You know, none of that was ever put in my thinking, if that makes sense. You feel me? I mean, I remember one time, this is when I first moved here, I was 25, 26 years old.
He's in Georgia too, by the way, Chris. He's in Georgia. Okay.
What?
Thanks.
I was just telling where you live now.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we're in Georgia. I'm assuming, I'm just assuming everyone else is in Georgia, but we're not. But it was in Smyrna, Georgia. Yeah. And I worked in a plant where I was the head of production for this particular. We did centrifugal molding is what we were, you know, the primary function. Mm-hmm. And the actual manager of our department came down and it had some little, you know, some I'm trying to use cool words. You know what I'm saying? But at the end of the day, it turned into a heated discussion, and then, you know, I put hands on him. You know what I'm saying? I beat him down. You know what I'm saying? And he was a white brother. His whole crew was black. All of it, like 20 of us out there. I'm the supervisor of 20 guys out there. All of them black. The vast majority of them are from Georgia. But anyway, and I didn't put my hands on this white man. And that's not how I saw it. You know, in my thinking, somebody disrespecting me and I handled him had nothing to do with color. You know what I'm saying? You feel me? But this whole crew of black guys, the vast majority of was from either Alabama or Georgia. And their response was like, "Oh my God, you better run! You gonna call the police or you gonna?" I mean, they was in straight panic. Yeah, you know what I mean? Like it was just mind blowing. Like I was like, "What in the world have I stepped into?" I really felt like I had went back in time 20 years when I realized what was actually going on in their thinking versus mine.
That's how my father ended up in California. Right. He was in Cedartown, Georgia. White young lady was on the porch. She swore they either whistled at her or something to her. And that night, because my grandparents, my dad's parents, they knew the police, a couple guys on the police department. They had one black guy that I've ever known. I had known all my life. They went, I guess, I don't know which one told who, but they said they're looking for him. You need to get him out. That night, my dad loaded up his Mazda and drove out.
Wow.
Because they had said he didn't touch her. He either looked at her wrong or whistled at her or something like that. And he said, and the thing about it was he wasn't even there. They just put his name out there that he was. So those brothers you had on the shift with you, and this was in like 73, 74. He just got back from Vietnam, so maybe in 75, 74, 75, somewhere in there. He had to get up out of Cedartown, man. It took him a while to come back to Cedartown. Right. Because of that.
It's just highlighting the difference.
My grandmother made sure he hit the road.
Yeah, but I'm saying my point is just highlighting the difference in the thinking. Yeah. That I almost immediately recognize that there's a different mindset here. You know, you know what I'm saying? I'm serious, like, because I was never shaped out of that. You feel me? And for the most part of the area that I grew up in, I don't know of a lot of brothers that were. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? It was just a lot of buck where we were from. You know, it was just
y'all bought it. Okay. If you didn't like it, you had to fight about it, huh? See, that's the thing. I told my son, y'all don't ever say nobody, meet me after school, meet me. No, we don't ever do that. I'm like, we were like, dude, people want to meet you after school, want to meet you in the locker room, because you didn't tell what happened in the locker room. Coach didn't come in.
Right.
Coach didn't come in the locker room. So it was like, dude, I've never, now that's why all the guns and fighting and shooting and stuff. Then we had a couple people that may have carried a knife, but that was, we're from Georgia. Somebody had a knife.
Thing. Yeah, for real.
And we might have gotten off task a little bit there.
Yeah, you know what? Tell us the
questions.
Well, I mean, I was thinking as you were telling your stories, you know, about those being kind of like the like overt old-fashioned versions, right? That are not old-fashioned, they're still happening.
That's right.
And yet I was thinking about how many kind of intentional actions I do with, like when I enter into an organization and I have my colleague of color, unless I stand 2 feet behind and purposely put my briefcase in my right hand so I can't shake, I'm the person who gets talked to. So like we have this whole thing about how do we get it to be that just even from the start of the engagement, that people see my co-facilitator as somebody to look at and pay attention to. Or, you know, when we go in a restaurant, you know, I'm the person that asks for the table because we're going to get a different table.
Wow.
I mean, you know, so.
And you've actually noticed that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
For sure. Or like if we're in a hotel and some of the AV equipment breaks or something, I'm the one who's going to talk to the management about it. They're not, because they're going to be like, you broke it.
Totally different response, right?
Yeah, you broke it and give us your credit card. Whereas if I go, they're like, oh, sir, so sorry. Oh, we'll get right on it, right?
Oh, that's heavy. God, it's so
heavy. Right? And so like it's still a version of that, right? It's that old-fashioned stuff, but us white people, like you said, we think about it as hate.
Yeah. That's deep. That's deep because I never thought about that part. So it's in every arena, every area. Yeah, wow, that's deep. What you just said, Chris, I never would have thought about that.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Another minister, it's really sharp brother. He's a white guy, really, really sharp brother. Preaches for me, you know, and different things like that. We're good friends. But he's very pro-life. I mean, just pro-abortion, just, you know, just really, you know, speaking against abortion, I should say. Conservative, he probably would describe himself as conservative as far as his politics, you know, and different things like that. So one day we're talking, and my question to him was like, why do you think you're so aggressive when it comes to being an anti-abortionist? You know what I'm saying? Whereas you don't have the same voice when it comes to, you know, the injustice of police brutality or police murdering kids in the street or whatever. You don't have that same vibrancy as it relates, you know. And he was like, well, I do. And I said, well, no, you don't. They're not the same. You know, you're really on a 9 or 10 when it comes to, you know, how you're against abortion. But then when it comes to having that same picture of the value and the importance of life, that seems to miss when you're dealing with injustice. I don't get it. And he's like, nah, it's not like that. And he starts, you know, again, talking about abortion and how important it is and how valuable kids are and how valuable life is and family is and all this thing. He preached a 20-minute message about it. And I says, well, I can tell you why. You know what I'm saying? You know? And I gave him a light version. I didn't even give him a heavy makeover. I really gave him a light version. I said, you ever realize that when we're growing up that the hero always looked like you, but the villain always looked like me?
For real.
You ever notice the news, how they'll spend the first 5 to 10 minutes of any news broadcast, you know, literally breaking down the negativities that some ethnicity or race has done? You know what I'm saying? It's very, very intentional. You ever notice how they will always tell you, you know, whenever, you know, someone of color has been involved in a crime, it is always mentioned their color, you know, whether it's Hispanic or black, you know what I'm saying? But that never happens when they're dealing with white. You know, I said it's very intentional. There's a programming, a conditioning that you literally sit in and sit through your entire life. You feel what I'm saying? The reason why you don't have the same value for the 14, 15-year-old, 16-year-old that's killed in the street is because by the time that they're age, you have a predetermined idea of who that person is or what they've done. You know, so that's why the news always, you know, scripts, you know, their past very negatively. You know, even though they're the victim, now they're made as if they're the offender. You see what I'm saying? So because it supports that ideology that has been shaped in your thinking. You feel me? And that's you know, my point in even bringing that up is this is the type of conditioning we're talking about. You feel me? Do you realize that there is a group of white women literally now for about 5 generations, you know, daughters of the Confederacy, that literally scripted education to make sure that white is highlighted and everything else is downsized.
Watch out now.
This is true. I'm like, I'm not making this stuff up. I wish I was
about to get my podcast shut down for real. Look at you. Look at you. You about to get my podcast shut down.
Okay, I'm gonna calm down there.
Go ahead. Finish it up. Tell the truth.
We're talking about a major system that is shaping the minds and the way people think in our nation. And this has been going on literally for 4 or 5 generations.
And now they're rewriting it to write out. I told you last time we spoke.
It's not a new thing.
No, they're rewriting the part about slavery. I told you they're taking that out.
Oh, yeah,
it's going to get
whitewashed. Slavery.
Yeah, and once, like I was telling you, one state they got a page and a half, I think. Then you got all the new athletes and stuff. I'm like, and the thing, that's another conditioning too for our kids. And I had to tell my children, I don't care about what you do on the court. If you ain't doing nothing in the classroom, I don't care what happened out there. You won't do nothing out there.
Right.
About sports, you could be 30 for 30, man. 30 points, 30 rebounds every game. I'll shut that thing down. Right. You'll never play another sport. And one of my sons, he thought I was joking. We had to prove to him I'm not joking.
You weren't playing.
No, we're not playing but that's a conditioning though. That's your way out, man. That's how you become successful. And I'm finding that so many guys, some are, and I'm not downing sports because later on tonight I'm probably going to be watching that Georgia and Auburn game. I'm just letting you know later tonight. But and then my Lakers, when they come on, or this week I'll be watching them too for that. And they're going to do that sweep. I'm just saying I'm going to be watching it. But that's not the goal.
On their way.
Yeah,
that's not the way out. You know what I'm saying? But they made that to be such a great thing, and I admire those guys, all that they do, because they're great athletes, they're great human beings in their sports. But they tell you only 2% of the guys that you see, like the 2% of the guys we see on Saturday, will make it to Sunday. And only those people that make it to Sunday, their careers 2 to 3 years. If you get past 5, you've done great. But that's also when they start paying you your pension. So if you notice, careers have gotten shorter for certain people and some people because they now up the pension, and they've also decided that they're gonna cover more in the pension with some of the insurance and stuff. So some of those guys' careers are gonna be cut a lot shorter because of that. They're like, nah, we ain't paying that stuff.
Right. I'm with you.
But yeah, I appreciate.
I think us white people do get thinking that unity is the answer. Whereas usually what that ends up meaning is we want you to assimilate.
That's right.
Right. The unity comes from you people's assimilation.
That's right.
And I think the other thing too is that I think that a lot of white people, seeing the antidote to the Klan or to those things is that we're going to say we don't notice color. We don't see color, right? And then that becomes prohibitive to have, because we start to feel all proud that we don't see color, right? And we're woke and all that kind of stuff. And so, we don't want to then hear that there's all this systemic stuff that's there, and that in fact unity is hiding it, and you got to do something about disrupting that. We think that that's antithetical. I mean, a lot of organizations, when I go in, some don't hire me because I talk explicitly that we work in racial affinity. And people are like, you're having a white group? How's that different than a Klan? Like, no. And people of color, like, no, we ain't just talking about with all the people of color. You're just ghettoizing us off over to here. We want to be with the white people. And the white people are like, what are we going to talk about if we don't got any people of color in the room about race? And so actually asking people to move explicitly toward understanding themselves as different. I think we think that difference automatically is unequal. And so how do we learn that it's not about unity, it's our being okay with our differences.
Come on.
Right.
That's good. That's really the love of God. So even out of our Christian experience, the way that we've done unity is all wrong. God was intentional. You think he made people of different because it was an accident? There's an intentionality to that. There's a value to every person. You feel me? And if you don't have the lens to be able to appreciate that value, you're missing God's plan.
For real.
You know what I'm saying? God's plan was diversity. It wasn't a pretentious idea of I don't see color. Where did you get that? You know, and the thing that always tickles me is the same people will be talking about there's going to be many nations in heaven. Well, it's valuable then, but not valuable now. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
That's mind blowing to me. You feel me?
For real.
You know, that's a pretentious layer, so you don't have to confront the struggles that you have with difference.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? You don't have to learn to appreciate. There's nothing wrong with color. There's everything wrong with how we've been taught to deal with color.
That's right.
I'm
getting
excited. Let's pray.
Hey, I want to, because it's getting late. I'm not going to hold you guys much longer. But I do appreciate both of you coming on to discuss. We started a conversation. Didn't say we answered everything, but we started a conversation. Some things for people to listen to and think about. That's what this podcast was about today. And I appreciate you two come helping me make this something that people can take and listen to, because I've started it, but I never was able to finish one. So guys, again, I appreciate both of you for taking time out of your schedules tonight from your families to be with me. Guys here on Straight Talk No Chaser, we appreciate you taking time out of your schedule to listen to our mini conversation. This is the first conversation of so many more that need to be had. So guys, thank you again. Also look for us on YouTube on the Straight Talk. We are now on PGS Radio as a public radio station online. So we're expanding. God is taking us to different places. And also look for our services starting to be aired on there as well. Guys, thank you again for being with us. We appreciate each and every one of you. Y'all have a wonderful night. God bless you both.
Yeah.
Good night.
All right, bro.
Good night, man.
This is a show where the spirit has control. Straight talk, no chaser. So listen up close, get the medicine for your soul. Straight talk, no chaser. Telling you the truth is what we here to do. Straight talk.